The Zephyrian ship floated dead in space like a broken piece of art. Its crystal hull caught the light from distant stars and threw it back in soft rainbow colors. Inside the ship, Commander Vexhai pressed his thin hand against the control panel. His fingers looked like they were made of clear glass. They shook as he tried to send another distress call. The ship was dying. The power systems that kept 10,000 Zephyrians alive were failing one by one. The air recycling units made strange grinding sounds that hurt their sensitive ears. The temperature controls had stopped working 2 days ago, and the ship was getting colder every hour. Vexhai looked at his reflection in the dark screen. His people were beautiful creatures, tall and graceful, with bodies that seemed to be carved from living crystal. They moved like dancers and spoke in musical voices. That sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But they were also fragile, so very fragile. His homeworld had been perfect. The weather never changed. Temperature stayed exactly the same all year round. There were no storms, no earthquakes, no dangerous animals. Food grew in neat gardens that never needed tending. Water flowed in clean streams that never dried up or flooded. His people had lived there for millions of years without ever knowing fear or pain or hardship. But their son was dying. The scientists had seen it coming for centuries, but nobody wanted to believe it. The perfect world would soon become a frozen ball of ice floating in eternal darkness. So they built ships and packed everything they could carry and left their paradise forever. Now they were lost. The navigation computer had broken 3 weeks into their journey, so the engines were shutting down one by one. The ship that was supposed to carry them to a new home had become their tomb. Vexhai sent another distress signal into the empty darkness. He had been doing this for days, but nobody answered. The galaxy was a big place, and their ship was very small. Maybe nobody would ever find them. Maybe his people would die here in the cold and dark, far from home. He was about to turn off the radio when something crackled through the speakers. A voice, not a Zephyrian voice, but something else, something rough and strong that spoke in hard sounds instead of music. Far away, Captain Jake Murphy was drinking coffee on the bridge of his ship, the New Horizon. The coffee was too hot and too bitter, but he drank it anyway, because that was what humans did. They drank bitter coffee and ate food that other species would find disgusting and somehow managed to enjoy it. Jake was a typical human in his early 40s. His hair was turning gray at the sides, and his face had lines around the eyes from years of squinting at screens and worrying about things beyond his control. He was not very tall and not very handsome, but he was tough in the way that all humans were tough. He'd survived childhood diseases that would kill most aliens. He had broken bones and healed from cuts and burns and bruises that would leave other species permanently. Damaged, his ship was exploring the outer edges of human space, looking for new worlds and new resources. It was not a military vessel, but it was built like one because humans built everything like they expected it to be attacked. The hull was thick metal that could stop most weapons. Engines were powerful enough to outrun almost anything. The life support systems were designed to keep working even if half the ship was destroyed. The crew of 37 humans went about their daily work with casual efficiency. Fixed things that broke and checked systems that were working. Fine and prepared for emergencies that might never come. This was normal for humans. They always expected trouble because trouble always found them eventually. Lisa Adams was in the engine room, covered in grease and sweat as she adjusted the power couplings. She was a small woman with strong hands and a mind that understood machines. Better than most people understood other people. She had been working since early morning. She would keep working until the job was done because that was what humans did. Carlos Rivera was on the security deck, running combat drills with 6 other crew members. They practiced fighting enemies that did not exist and preparing for battles that would probably never happen. But they did it anyway because humans had learned long ago that the time to prepare for war was during peace. Dr. Patricia Bell was in the medical bay, studying reports about alien biology. She had never treated a non-human patient, but she wanted to be ready, just in case. Her medical training had taught her to cut into living bodies to heal them, to break bones to set them properly, to cause pain in order to prevent greater pain. These ideas would horrify most species, but to humans they were just common sense. When the distress signal came through the radio, Jake almost ignored it. Space was full of old signals bouncing around from dead ships and abandoned stations. But something about this one was different. It was weak and fading, but it was also fresh. Someone out there needed help right now. Jake called his senior officers to the bridge. Lisa came up from the engine room, still wiping grease off her hands. Carlos arrived with sweat on his face from the combat drills. Patricia brought her medical scanner in case someone was injured. They listened to the alien signal together. The translation computer struggled to make sense of the musical language, but the universal distress codes were clear enough. Someone was dying out there in the dark. Jake looked at the distance readings. It would take them 8 hours to reach the source of the signal. 8 hours during which the aliens might run out of air, or power, or hope. But there was no question about what to do. Humans did not leave people to die if they could help it. That was just who they were. He gave the orders to change course. The New Horizon turned toward the distress signal and began to accelerate. In the engine room, Lisa pushed the reactors to their limits, squeezing every bit of speed out of the ship. On the security deck, Carlos prepared his teams for anything they might find. In the medical bay, Patricia gathered supplies and tried to imagine what kind of injuries aliens might have. Back on the Zephyrian ship, Vexai felt his crystal heart fluttered with something that might have been hope. The strange voice had answered his call. Someone was coming. He did not know who they were or what they wanted, but they were coming. He announced the news to his people through the ship's communication system. 10,000 Zephorians who had been preparing to die suddenly had reason to live a little longer. They did not know that help was coming from a species that had been forged in the fires of the most dangerous world in the galaxy. They did not know that their rescuers came from a place where every day was a battle, against hostile weather and dangerous animals and diseases that could kill without warning. They did not know that they were about to meet the children of Earth, the survivors of a world so harsh that most aliens considered it uninhabitable. They did not know that humanity had turned their deadly home into a training ground that produced the toughest, most adaptable, most determined species the galaxy had ever seen. All they knew was that someone had heard their call for help. Someone was coming to save them. In 8 hours, they would learn what it meant to be rescued by Deathworlders. The New Horizon came out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder that ran through the entire ship. Jake Murphy gripped his chair as the stars stopped streaking past the windows and became steady points of light again. In front of them, floating, like a giant piece of broken jewelry, was the alien ship. Lisa Adams whistled softly from her position at the science station. The alien vessel was beautiful in a way that human ships never were. It curved and flowed like it had grown instead of being built. The hull seemed to be made of some kind of crystal that caught the light from nearby stars and scattered it in soft,
hollow rainbow patterns.
Carlos Rivera was less impressed with the beauty. He studied the ship through his security scanners, looking for weapons or defenses or anything that might be a threat. He found nothing. The alien ship had no armor, no shields, no guns that he could detect. It was like they had never imagined that someone might want to hurt them. Dr. Patricia Bell ran her medical scanners over the ship, trying to get some idea of what kind of life forms were inside. The readings were confusing. The aliens seemed to have very slow heart rates and body temperatures, much lower than humans. Their life signs were faint, almost like they were sleeping or dying. Jake opened a communication channel to the alien ship. The response came quickly, a voice that sounded like music played on glass instruments. The translation computer worked. Hard to turn the musical sounds into words that humans could understand. The alien introduced himself as Commander Vexai. His people were called Zephyrians, and they were refugees from a dying star system. Their ship was failing, and they needed help to survive. Jake could hear the fear in the alien's voice, even through the electronic translation. Jake made his decision quickly, where humans would go aboard the alien ship to see what they could do to help. He would lead the team himself, along with Lisa, to handle any technical problems. Carlos for security, and Patricia in case anyone needed medical attention. They put on their space suits and checked their equipment twice. The suits were heavy and bulky, designed to protect humans from the vacuum of space and any number of other dangers. The life support systems could keep them alive for hours, even if their ship was destroyed. The suits had built-in tools and emergency supplies and enough armor to stop small weapons. The airlock between the two ships opened with a soft hiss of equalizing air pressure. Jake stepped through first, followed by his team. They found themselves in a corridor that looked like the inside of a cave made of crystal. The walls glowed with their own soft light, and the air smelled like flowers after rain. Commander Vexai was waiting for them, and Jake had to fight not to stare. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of clear glass. He could see the alien's organs moving inside his body, strange structures that pulsed with soft light. When Vexai moved, he flowed like water, his joints bending. In ways that would be impossible for a human, behind the commander stood several other Zephyrians, all staring at the humans with large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. They whispered to each other in their musical language, and Jake could hear fear in their voices. He realized that they were just as afraid of humans as humans might be of them. Vexai spoke carefully, his words translated by a device that hung around his neck like a pendant. He thanked the humans for coming and apologized for any trouble they might be causing. He explained that his people had never seen beings like humans before, and they were not sure what to expect. Jake tried to put the alien at ease. He explained that humans were explorers and traders, and they always helped other species when they could. But even as he spoke, he could see that his presence was frightening the Zephyrians. They kept staring at his bulky suit and heavy equipment, like he was some kind of armored monster. Lisa asked to see the ship's engine room, and Vexai led them deeper into the vessel. The corridors were filled with Zephyrian civilians, all of whom pressed themselves against the walls as the humans passed. Jake noticed that they were all incredibly fragile-looking. Their arms and legs were thin as sticks, and they moved very carefully as if they were afraid of breaking themselves. The engine room was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Instead of metal machinery, there were what looked like giant plants growing out of the floor and walls. The plants pulsed with light and made soft humming sounds. Lisa ran her scanner over them and shook her head in amazement. The aliens had somehow created living machines that grew like flowers and worked by singing to each other, but the living machines were dying. Several of the plant engines had turned brown and stopped glowing. Others were flickering weakly, their songs becoming faint and off-key. Lisa could see the problem immediately. The biomechanical systems were running out of nutrients, and the ship's recycling systems could not keep up with demand. Patricia was examining some of the sick Zephyrians. With her medical scanner, the readings made no sense to her. These beings seemed to be made more of crystal than flesh. Their bones were like glass, their blood was clear as water, and their organs were completely different from anything in her medical training. Carlos was studying the ship's security systems, which seemed to consist mainly of locked doors and polite requests to stay in authorized areas. There were no weapons, no armor, no defenses of any kind. It was like the Zephyrians had never imagined that anyone might want to attack them. As they worked, the humans began to learn more about Zephyrian society. Vexai explained that his people came from a world of perfect peace and harmony. There was no crime, no violence, no conflict of any kind. Everyone worked together for the good of all. Nobody ever fought or argued or disagreed about anything important. Jake found this hard to believe. He asked what happened when Zephyrians disagreed about something, and Vexai looked confused. He said that disagreements were rare, and when they did happen, everyone would discuss the problem until they found a solution that made everyone happy. This could take days or weeks, but they were never in a hurry. Lisa was fascinated by the Zephyrian technology, but she was also frustrated by it. The living machines were incredibly advanced, but they were also incredibly delicate. A human engineer could fix a broken engine by hitting it with a hammer or welding on a replacement part. But you could not hit a living machine with a hammer, and you could not weld on a replacement flower. Patricia was having similar problems with Zephyrian biology. These beings were so fragile that what humans would consider a minor injury could kill them instantly. Their bones would break if you squeezed them too hard. Their skin would tear if you scratched it with a fingernail. Even their emotions were delicate. Several Zephyrians had fainted when Carlos showed them a picture of a human weapon. Carlos was beginning to understand just how different the two species were. He casually mentioned that humans often fought wars against each other, and the Zephyrians looked at him like he had just confessed to eating babies. The very concept of violence was so foreign to them that they could barely comprehend it. As the hours passed, both species began to realize that they were dealing with something completely outside their experience. The Zephyrians had never met beings who could survive in hostile environments or fight their way out of dangerous situations. The humans had never met beings who were so gentle and peaceful that they could not even imagine hurting another living thing. But despite their differences, they were working together to save the Zephyrian ship. Lisa was teaching the alien engineers how to jury-rig their dying systems using human techniques. Patricia was learning how to treat crystal-based injuries. Carlos was helping to organize the evacuation procedures in case the ship could not be saved. And Jake was beginning to understand that this first contact would change both species forever. The Zephyrians were about to learn what it meant to be rescued by the children of a death world. Humanity was about to discover that sometimes the most important thing they could offer the galaxy was not their technology or their weapons, but simply their willingness to help. Lisa Adams was elbow-deep in the guts of a Zephyrian biomechanical processor. Commander Vexai asked her about Earth's weather. She wiped the strange blue fluid from her hands and thought about how to explain something that seemed normal to her but might sound impossible to him. She started with something simple. Winter where she grew up in Minnesota could get as cold as -40 degrees. The Zephyrian commander's crystal face went completely white when the translator finished speaking. He made a sound like breaking glass and had to sit down on the nearest surface, Lisa continued, not understanding why he looked so shocked. She explained that summer could be over 40 degrees above zero, that humans regularly worked outside in both temperatures, that some humans actually enjoyed these extreme conditions and did things like skiing in the winter and running marathons in the summer heat. Vexai's breathing became rapid and shallow. He asked if humans died from these temperature changes. Lisa laughed and said no, humans just wore different clothes. Heavy coats in winter, light shirts in summer. Human body could adapt to almost anything if you gave it time and the right equipment. More Zephyrians had gathered around to listen, their large eyes reflecting the soft light from their bioluminescent walls. One of them asked about storms on Earth. Lisa tried to think of a gentle way to describe a hurricane, but there really was no gentle way. She explained that Earth had weather systems with winds that could reach over 200 kilometers per hour. Winds strong enough to destroy entire cities. The Zephyrians made sounds of distress that their translators could not convert into words. Several of them had to leave the room because they could not handle hearing about such violence from nature. Vexai asked if humans hid underground when these storms came. Lisa shook her head and explained that humans had learned to predict storms and build structures that could survive them. Some humans even flew aircraft directly into hurricanes to study them better. This information caused 3 more Zephyrians to faint. Dr. Patricia Bell hurried over to check on them, but there was little she could do. Zephyrian medicine consisted mainly of rest and gentle music and waiting for their crystal bodies to heal themselves. The concept of actively treating injuries was as foreign to them as their fragility was to humans. Patricia tried to change the subject by asking about Zephyrian medical practices. But this only made things worse when she began describing human medicine in return. She explained that humans could survive injuries that would kill most other species. Broken bones, deep cuts, severe burns, diseases that attacked their organs. Human bodies fought back against damage and infection with an immune system that was like a personal army. She mentioned that humans could donate blood to save other humans. The Zephyrians found this idea terrifying. The thought of deliberately taking fluid from one person and putting it into another person made them physically ill. When Patricia explained surgery, describing how human doctors would cut open bodies to repair damage inside, several Zephyrians had to be carried from the room. Carlos Rivera was having his own problems trying to explain human history to a group of young Zephyrians who had never seen violence of any kind. He started with something he thought was harmless, telling them about human sports, but even games like football and hockey sounded like brutal combat, two beings whose idea of competition was seeing who could grow the most beautiful flower. He tried to explain that humans enjoyed physical challenges and friendly competition. The Zephyrians could not understand why anyone would deliberately make things difficult for themselves. Their sports consisted of harmony singing and pattern dancing, activities where everyone worked together to create something beautiful instead of trying to defeat each other. When Carlos mentioned that humans had armies and weapons and had fought wars throughout their history, the young Zephyrians began crying tears that looked like liquid diamonds. They could not comprehend how a species could survive if its members fought against each other. Their entire civilization was built on cooperation and mutual support. Jake Murphy found himself trying to explain Earth itself to Commander Vex High, and he was beginning to understand why the aliens seemed so shocked by everything humans considered normal. He described Earth's gravity, which was more than twice as strong as the artificial gravity on the Zephyrian ship. He explained that humans had evolved to live under this crushing force, developing dense bones and powerful muscles just to stand upright and walk around. He told Vex High about Earth's atmosphere, which contained oxygen at levels that would be toxic to many species, about the radiation from their sun that could cause cancer and blindness, but which humans had learned to protect themselves from, about the magnetic field that protected Earth from cosmic radiation that would sterilize most worlds. Vex High asked. If Earth was considered a dangerous planet by human standards, Jake paused, not sure how to answer. He explained that humans had classified thousands of worlds based on how suitable they were for life. Earth was rated as a Class 12 death world, meaning it was so hostile that most galactic civilizations would consider it completely uninhabitable. The word death world caused a stir among all the Zephyrians within hearing distance. They had heard this term before in their astronomical databases. Death worlds were legendary places where life should not be able to exist, let alone evolve intelligence. There were perhaps a dozen known death worlds in the entire galaxy, and most were avoided by all spacefaring species. Jake continued his explanation, not realizing the impact his words were having. He described Earth's diverse environments: deserts where the temperature could kill you in hours, frozen wastelands where exposed skin would freeze solid in minutes, deep oceans with crushing pressure and no light, mountain ranges so high that there was not enough oxygen to breathe. He explained that humans lived in all these places, not just survived, but built cities and raised families and created art and literature and music. They had not just adapted to their hostile world, they had made it their home and learned to love its terrible beauty. Lisa finished her work on the biomechanical processor and rejoined the conversation. She had been thinking about the differences between human and Zephyrian technology, and she was beginning to understand why their approaches were so different. I asked Vex High about his homeworld, and his description painted a picture of paradise. That sounded boring to human ears. The Zephyrian homeworld had been perfect in every way. The temperature never varied by more than a few degrees. There were no storms, no earthquakes, no volcanic eruptions, no natural disasters of any kind. The landscape was gentle rolling hills covered in soft grass and beautiful flowers. Rivers flowed with crystal clear water that never flooded or dried up. Food grew in abundance without anyone having to plant or tend it. There were no dangerous animals, no poisonous plants, no diseases, no parasites. The Zephyrians had evolved in a world so gentle and peaceful that they had never needed to develop defenses against anything. They had become beautiful and graceful and intelligent, but they had also become fragile beyond human understanding. Patricia asked about Zephyrian evolution. The answer explained everything. For millions of years, the Zephyrians had never faced any challenges that required them to become stronger or tougher or more resilient. Natural selection had favored beauty and intelligence and cooperation, never survival skills or physical durability. Carlos realized that this was why the Zephyrians had no weapons or defenses on their ship. They had never needed to protect themselves from anything because nothing on their world had ever threatened them. The very concepts of war and violence and self-defense were as alien to them as their crystal bodies were to humans. The humans began to understand that they were not just from different worlds, but from fundamentally different types of worlds. Earth had been a constant struggle for survival that had forged humanity into one of the toughest species in the galaxy. The Zephyrian homeworld had been a gentle paradise that had created beings of incredible beauty and intelligence, but almost no physical resilience. As the day wore on, the repairs continued. Both species learned more about each other. The Zephyrians discovered that their rescuers were the products of the most hostile world they had ever heard of. The humans realized that they had found a species that represented everything Earth was not. Gentle and peaceful and utterly unprepared for the harsh realities of the universe. But despite their differences, or perhaps because of them, the two species were working well together. Human toughness combined with Zephyrian knowledge was solving problems that neither could handle alone. The dying ship was slowly coming back to life under their combined efforts, and both groups were beginning to see the value of their unlikely partnership. The emergency alarm on the Zephyrian ship sounded like a gentle bell compared to the harsh warning signals humans were used to, but the meaning was clear enough. Something had gone wrong in the ship's power core, and it was going wrong fast. Lisa Adams ran her scanner over the readings and felt her stomach drop. The main power coupling had cracked, and radiation was leaking into the surrounding compartments. On a human ship, this would be a serious problem that required immediate attention. On the Zephyrian vessel, it was a death sentence for anyone who went near it. Commander Vexi studied the radiation readings with growing despair. The levels were already high enough to kill any Zephyrian who entered the area, and they were rising fast. Without someone to replace the damaged coupling, the entire power system would fail within hours. His people would die slowly in the cold. Darkness of space, Jake Murphy looked at the same readings and saw a difficult but solvable problem. The radiation levels were dangerous, but not immediately lethal to a human wearing proper protection. He had worked in much worse conditions during his years in the Merchant Marine, fixing reactors that had been damaged in combat or accident. He told Vexi that he would go into the contaminated area and replace the coupling himself. The Zephyrian commander stared at him in shock. The radiation levels would cause severe illness or death to any normal life form. How could the human possibly survive such exposure? Jake explained that humans had evolved on a world with high natural radiation levels. Their cells were very good at repairing radiation damage. Their immune systems could handle exposure that would kill most aliens. It would not be pleasant, and he would need medical treatment afterward. But he would survive. Dr. Patricia Bell prepared the best radiation suit they had, while Jake studied the Zephyrian power coupling design. The suit was heavy and clumsy designed for the worst environments humans might encounter. It had thick lead lining and its own air supply, and enough shielding to protect. Someone working inside a damaged nuclear reactor, the Zephyrians watched in amazement as Jake squeezed into the bulky suit. To them, he looked like some kind of walking tank, covered in metal and plastic armor. They could not understand how he could move or work while wearing something so heavy and restrictive. Jake entered the contaminated area through an airlock that the Zephyrians had sealed off hours earlier. His radiation detector immediately began clicking rapidly, warning him of the dangerous levels of energy filling the air. But the clicking was steady, not the rapid buzzing that would indicate immediately lethal exposure. The damaged coupling was a beautiful piece of biomechanical art, a living crystal structure that channeled power through organic conduits. It had developed a hairline crack that was growing larger every minute. Jake could see why the Zephyrians could not fix it themselves. Their delicate hands would have been destroyed by the radiation before they could even reach the damaged part. Working in the bulky suit was like trying to perform surgery while wearing thick gloves and looking through a foggy window. Had done similar work before. Human space technology was designed to be repairable under extreme conditions by people wearing protective gear. Every coupling and connection could be reached and replaced by someone in a radiation suit. The Zephyrian coupling was more delicate, but the principles were the same. Jake carefully removed the cracked section and installed the replacement part that Lisa had fabricated from their spare materials. It was not as elegant as the original biomechanical design, but it would work and it would last. Meanwhile, Carlos Rivera was dealing with a different kind of crisis. The Zephyrian ship had drifted into a field of space debris while the crew was focused on the power problems. Chunks of metal and ice were moving through the area at high speed, and several pieces were on a collision course with the fragile alien vessel. The Zephyrians had noticed the danger, but their response was to hold committee meetings to discuss the best course of action. They wanted to consider all possible options and reach a consensus that everyone could agree with. This was how they had solved problems for millions of years on their peaceful homeworld. Carlos looked at the tracking data and realized they had maybe 20 minutes before the first impact. There was no time for committee meetings or group discussions. Immediately began calculating intercept courses, powering up the New Horizons defensive systems. The human ship was equipped with point defense weapons designed to destroy incoming missiles and debris. Carlos had trained on these systems for years, preparing for battles that might never come. Now his paranoid preparation was about to save 10,000 alien lives. He explained his plan to Commander Vexi in quick, simple terms. The New Horizon would position itself between the debris field and the Zephyrian ship. They would use their weapons to destroy or deflect the largest pieces, while their shields absorbed the impact of the smaller fragments. Vexi was horrified by the idea. Carlos was talking about deliberately flying into danger and using weapons to destroy things. These concepts were so foreign to Zephyrian, thinking that several of the aliens became physically ill just listening to the plan. But they could see the debris field approaching on their screens. They knew that their beautiful ship could not survive even a small impact. Their crystal hull was designed for beauty and efficiency, not for taking damage. A single chunk of metal moving at high speed would punch through their defenses like they were made of paper. Carlos did not wait for official approval. He was already moving the New Horizon into position and charging the weapons systems. This was what humans did in crisis situations. They identified the problem, chose a solution, and acted immediately. There would be time for explanations and apologies later. After everyone was safe, the battle against the debris field lasted only minutes. But those minutes demonstrated the fundamental difference between human and Zephyrian thinking. Carlos destroyed incoming threats with precise weapon fire, while simultaneously coordinating with Lisa to adjust the ship's position and with Patricia to prepare for possible casualties. The Zephyrians watched in fascination and terror as the human ship moved through the debris field like a dancer, spinning and turning to avoid the largest pieces while destroying others with bursts of coherent energy. The New Horizons' shields flared and sparked as they absorbed impacts, but the tough human engineering held together when the danger had passed. Vexi asked Carlos how he had learned to make such quick decisions under pressure. The human tried to explain that this was normal for his species. Humans faced emergencies all the time, and they had learned to act fast and think later. On Earth, hesitation could mean death. Dr. Patricia Bell was learning about Zephyrian medicine while treating several aliens who had been injured during the crisis. Their injuries were minor by human standards, just small cracks in their crystal skin where they had bumped against walls during the ship's movements. But to the Zephyrians, these were serious wounds that required immediate care. Zephyrian medical treatment consisted mainly of rest and meditation and gentle music that somehow helped their bodies heal. Patricia found this frustrating because she wanted to do something active to help her patients. Human medicine was about taking action, performing surgery, administering drugs, fighting disease and injury with all available tools. But she began to understand that the Zephyrian approach worked for their physiology. Their crystal bodies could repair themselves if given time and the right conditions. They did not need the aggressive medical interventions that humans required because they had evolved in a world where serious injuries were almost unknown. Jake emerged from the radiation zone, tired and sick, but alive. His exposure had been significant, and he would need treatment to help his body repair the cellular damage. But he would recover completely in a few days, something that amazed the Zephyrians, who had expected him to die from the radiation. Lisa had been working with Zephyrian engineers to understand their biomechanical technology, and she was beginning to see how human and alien approaches could complement each other. Human engineering was tough and reliable and easy to repair, but it was also crude and wasteful. Zephyrian technology was elegant and efficient and beautiful, but it was also fragile and difficult to maintain. Together, they were creating hybrid solutions that combine the best of both approaches, human durability with Zephyrian elegance, Earth practicality with Zephyrian sophistication. The repairs to the alien ship were taking longer than a purely human solution would require, but they were also more elegant and would last longer than anything humans could build alone. As the day ended and both ships settled into a stable orbit around a nearby moon, the two species had learned important lessons about each other. The Zephyrians had seen what it meant to be rescued by beings who had been forged in the fires of a hostile world. They had watched humans face danger and radiation in split-second decisions with calm competence. The humans had learned that strength came in many forms. The Zephyrians might be physically fragile, but their knowledge and technology and peaceful wisdom were strengths that humanity lacked. Their gentle approach to problems and their emphasis on beauty and harmony offered a different way of looking at the universe. 3 days later, the Zephyrian ship was working again. The biomechanical engines hummed with renewed life. The crystal hull had been patched and reinforced, and the navigation systems were running better than they had in weeks. But Commander Vexai knew that his people would not have survived without human help. He stood in his private quarters, looking out at the stars and thinking about what he had learned. His species had spent millions of years believing they were advanced and sophisticated. They had created beautiful cities, an elegant technology, and a perfect, peaceful society. But they had also created something fragile that could not survive in the real universe without protection. The humans had shown him what real strength looked like. Not the strength to build beautiful things, but the strength to survive when everything went wrong. The strength to face danger and radiation and violence and somehow keep going. The strength that came from being born on a world that tried to kill you every single day. Jake Murphy was in the New Horizons conference room, writing his report for Earth Command. How could he explain what they had found out here in the dark between the stars? How could he describe a species so gentle that they had never learned to fight, so peaceful that they could barely understand conflict, so beautiful that looking at them was like watching living art, but also so fragile that a strong handshake could break their bones? So unprepared for the universe that they had no defenses against anything? So dependent on perfect conditions that even minor problems could kill them? Lisa Adams was working in the engineering section, studying samples of Zephyrian biomechanical technology that Vexai had given her. The organic computers were amazing, able to grow and adapt and repair themselves in ways that human machines never could. But they were also incredibly delicate and required very specific conditions to survive. She was beginning to see how human and Zephyrian technology could work together. Human engineering could provide the tough, reliable foundation, while Zephyrian biomechanics could add efficiency and elegance. Together, they could create ships and machines that were both durable and beautiful. Dr. Patricia Bell was reviewing her medical scans of the Zephyrians, trying to understand how such fragile beings had ever survived long enough to develop intelligence. Their bodies were masterpieces of delicate engineering, perfectly adapted for their gentle homeworld, but completely unsuited for anywhere else. But they were also incredibly intelligent and wise. Their peaceful nature had allowed them to develop philosophy and art and science without being distracted by wars and conflicts. They had insights into the universe that humans had never considered because humans were too busy fighting to survive. Carlos Rivera was thinking about galactic security and what the discovery of the Zephyrians meant for humanity's future in space. If there were species this gentle and vulnerable out there, they would need protection from the many dangers the universe could offer. Pirates, hostile aliens, natural disasters, and 1,000 other threats that the Zephyrians could never handle alone, but protection also meant responsibility. If humans became the guardians of peaceful species, they would have to be very careful not to become the thing those species needed protection from. Human history was full of examples of protectors who became conquerors. Commander Vexhai made his decision and called for a formal meeting with Captain Murphy. When both crews had gathered in the Zephyrian ship's main hall, he stood before them and began to speak in his musical voice. He thanked the humans for saving his people and his ship, but more than that, he thanked them for showing the Zephyrians what they had been missing. His species had thought they were complete, that their perfect, peaceful society was the highest form of civilization. Now they understood that they were only half of what intelligence could be. The Zephyrians had wisdom and knowledge and beauty, but they lacked the strength to survive in a dangerous universe. Humans had strength and courage and resilience, but they often lacked the patience and insight that came from millions of years of peace. Together, both species could become something greater than either could be alone. Vexhai formally requested that humanity and the Zephyrians become allies and partners. His people would share their technology and knowledge with humans, and humans would provide protection and guidance as the Zephyrians learned to survive in the real galaxy. Jake Murphy accepted the alliance on behalf of humanity, understanding that this decision would change both species forever. The Zephyrians would have to learn to be stronger and more self-reliant. Humans would have to learn to be gentler and more thoughtful in their approach to problems. Lisa immediately began planning joint research projects. Human engineers working with Zephyrian biomechanics could create incredible new technologies. Ships that could repair themselves and adapt to new situations. Computers that could grow and learn and evolve. Energy systems that worked in harmony with natural forces instead of fighting against them. Patricia proposed a medical exchange program. Human doctors could learn about crystal-based biology and organic healing techniques. Zephyrian healers could study human medicine and learn how to treat injuries and diseases more actively. Both species could benefit from sharing their knowledge of life and health. Carlos suggested a training program where selected Zephyrians could learn basic survival skills while humans learned about peaceful conflict resolution and cooperative decision-making. Neither species would try to change the other, but both could learn valuable lessons about different approaches to life. Over the following weeks, as the Zephyrian ship continued toward its destination with the New Horizon as escort, both crews worked together to establish the foundation of their new alliance. They created communication protocols and shared databases and joint procedures for handling emergencies. The Zephyrians were amazed by human adaptability. Jake's crew could work in conditions that would kill most aliens, eat food that other species found inedible, and solve problems that seemed impossible to more delicate minds. They began to understand why humans had become successful explorers and traders. Despite coming from such a hostile world, the humans were equally impressed by Zephyrian intelligence and wisdom. These gentle beings could see patterns and connections that humans missed. Their peaceful nature allowed them to find solutions that avoided conflict and created harmony. Their art and music and literature showed depths of beauty that human culture had rarely achieved. When they reached the Zephyrian destination, a system of planets that could support their crystal-based life, both species worked together to establish the first human Zephyrian colony. The settlement would serve as a trading post and research station and symbol of cooperation between Deathworlders and Scent. Deathworlders.news of the Alliance spread quickly through galactic communication networks. Other species had heard rumors of the terrible Deathworlders, who had emerged from one of the most hostile planets in the galaxy. But now they learned that these fearsome beings were also protectors and allies who helped those in need. Requests for contact began arriving from dozens of other peaceful species who had been struggling to survive in a dangerous universe. Gentle plant beings who needed protection from cosmic radiation, aquatic species whose water worlds were being threatened by asteroid impacts, crystalline entities similar to the Zephyrians who faced extinction from environmental changes. Jake Murphy found himself appointed as humanity's first ambassador to peaceful alien species. His mission was to identify which species genuinely needed help and which ones could be trusted with human friendship and protection. It was a huge responsibility that would shape humanity's future in the galaxy. Lisa Adams became the head of the new Joint Technology Development Program, working to combine human engineering with alien innovations. Her first project was designing hybrid ships that could survive in hostile environments while maintaining the beauty and efficiency that peaceful species preferred. Dr. Patricia Bell established the first interspecies medical research center, studying the biology and physiology of dozens of different alien species. Her work would help humans provide better medical care to their new allies while learning new healing techniques that could benefit everyone. Carlos Rivera was promoted to head of interspecies security, responsible for protecting peaceful species from threats they could not handle themselves. His job was to be the sword and shield that allowed gentle civilizations to continue being gentle in a universe that was often anything but peaceful. Commander Vexai returned to Zephyrian space as an ambassador for his own people, helping them understand that their perfect isolation was over. The galaxy was full of wonders and dangers, and they would need human allies to explore and survive both. The New Horizon became the first ship in what would eventually become a large fleet of Suslet, human vessels dedicated to protecting and assisting peaceful alien species. Each ship carried a mixed crew of humans and aliens, combining strength with wisdom, toughness with beauty, survival instincts with peaceful intentions. Jake Murphy concluded his final report with a simple observation that would become humanity's motto in their new role as galactic protectors. Aliens had sent out a distress signal, not knowing who would answer.